Denny Hamlin has raced inches from Kyle Busch's bumper for nearly 2 decades, through championship battles, team meetings, technical debriefs, and the kind of door-to-door combat that only 2 elite drivers sharing the same garage can truly understand. When Kyle "Rowdy" Busch died on May 21, 2026, at just 41 years old, Hamlin posted 4 words that said everything: "Absolutely cannot comprehend this." Coming from a man who has never been short of words, the brevity alone told you how deep the wound went. For the better part of 2 decades, Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch were the 1A and 1B of Joe Gibbs Racing, the 2 winningest active drivers in the Cup Series, with Busch at 63 wins and Hamlin at 61 when the news broke. Their careers were not just parallel, they were intertwined, built on the same equipment, sharpened against each other, defined by the constant back-and-forth competition that elevated both men above almost everyone else in the sport. Their rivalry was not always comfortable, and Hamlin has never pretended otherwise. But the tension was the point. Every team meeting they shared, every technical debrief where they pushed each other to find another tenth of a second, every lap they spent trading paint at 200 miles per hour made both of them better. Hamlin understood instinctively that his own 61-win career was inseparable from the standard Kyle Busch forced him to meet every single weekend. Arriving at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the Coca-Cola 600, the race Kyle had been preparing for when he made that 911 call from a training facility in Concord, was a jarring experience that Hamlin has described as unlike anything he has faced in his career. Kyle was supposed to be in that starting lineup. His name was on the entry list. And then the garage stood still in a way that racing garages almost never do. The entire NASCAR community gathered around the number 8 car in the infield to pay their respects. Drivers wore Busch hats and t-shirts. Teams placed memorial decals above driver side doors across the entire field. Hamlin stood in that garage and felt the full weight of a routine, the debates, the side-by-side battles, the post-race intensity, that had been permanently altered. The Coca-Cola 600 went green because Kyle would have wanted nothing less. But nothing about that weekend felt the same. What Hamlin wants the world to understand is that the rowdy persona, the aggression, the unapologetic intensity, the outbursts that made Kyle one of the most polarizing figures in the sport's history, was never the whole picture. Hamlin saw the version that existed in the in-between moments. The driver who was deeply passionate, sometimes brutally critical, but always driven by a standard of excellence that he applied to himself first and everyone else second. Those outbursts, Hamlin understood, were not ego. They were the overflow of a competitive desire that very few people in the history of this sport have ever matched. The rowdy persona sold tickets and generated headlines, but what it actually represented was a man who cared more about winning than almost anything else he could name. Hamlin respected that completely, because he recognized it. It was the same thing that drove his own career, just expressed at a volume the sport had rarely encountered before. Hamlin has been open about where his concern sits in the days following the loss. Not on the record books or the legacy statistics, but on Samantha, Brexton, and Lennox. He watched from close proximity as Kyle and Samantha fought through infertility struggles that nearly broke their marriage, came out the other side stronger, and built a family that became the most important thing in Kyle's life outside of the cockpit. He knows that the championships and the 234 victories across all national series are the public-facing legacy. But the private one, a husband who called teammates just to offer congratulations when nothing was required of him, a father who raced his own son at the track and beamed about it for weeks, that is the version Hamlin is grieving most personally. Richard Childress Racing's decision to hold the number 8 for Brexton tells him that the sport understands what needs to happen next. The name goes forward. The standard goes forward. And Hamlin intends to make sure the memory does too. Denny Hamlin will climb back into the number 11 car carrying something he has never carried before, the permanent absence of the man who was his greatest benchmark. Every win from here forward will be measured against a standard that Kyle Busch set and can no longer raise. And Hamlin feels that weight not as a burden but as an obligation. He has spent nearly 20 years being pushed to his absolute limit by the driver in the next car over. The debates, the battles, the friction that made both of them better, all of it now lives in the rearview mirror, permanent and irretrievable. What Hamlin holds on to is this: he was there for all of it. He was the one who had to match Kyle Busch lap for lap, season after season, in the same garage, under the same pressure, chasing the same trophies. Very few people in NASCAR history can say that. And no one who can say it will ever take it for granted again.